We stayed in Florence for a couple of days after the official tour, and on one of those days, we took 3 trips into the Tuscany area. One was a quick trip to the Chianti region, and we got a lesson in taste testing red wine and a lunch. It was a great ride, great scenery. Got a little lesson on vineyards in the process. It was a real charming villa, like the ones you would see in the movies. If you happen to be in Florence and you're looking to take side trips, this is a good little thing to look up. Then on to Monteriggioni. When you arrive there, as you drive up, it looks like a set from a movie because it looks like a castle. And even when you get to the parking spaces, you still have to walk up to the gate. You see right away why they picked this spot. It must have been a great defensive area. As soon as you walk through the gates, it's like a walk back in time. Of course, it probably smells a lot better now. But this is a medieval walled town, and it's actually referenced in Dante's Divine Comedy. The city-states are always fighting with each other, and during the conflicts between Siena and Florence in the Middle Ages, this city was strategically placed as a defensive fortification. As with all the places, there is a church. No matter where I go, if I take pictures inside a church, big or small, I always put a few euros in the collection boxes and maybe light a few candles. This is a knight in shining armor, made out of all kinds of other metal stuff. I am always amazed at finding cars in some of these places, like how do they even get them up here? This town withstood many attacks by both the Florentines and the forces of the Bishop of Volterra. There are 14 towers to this town, all on square bases and all equidistant from each other. There are 2 main portals or gates, and one gate opens towards Florence and the other one faces Rome. The town is architecturally and culturally significant. It hosts several piazzas even in this little town. Narrow paths for any invader who happens to get through the gates. It would be very difficult for them. The Medici's power reached here as well. You get quite a commanding view of the countryside. It would be very difficult to sneak up on these people. Built by the Sienese in 1214 to 1219, it was frontline in their wars against Florence. In the Middle Ages and the Renaissance area, it was a stopping point for Catholic pilgrims on their way to Rome and to the Vatican. This is San Gimignano, and we actually did get to 3 places in one day. The places are small enough that in a couple of hours you actually covered pretty much all the interesting areas. Although I suppose it's nice to spend nights in these little communities and see what goes on at night and what everything looked like under the lights. But you know, you got to see what you can see when you can see it. This is a small walled medieval hill town in the province of Siena. This is actually a memorial of the veterans of World War I. In the 3rd century BC, a small Etruscan village stood on the site. This place is unique in the preservation of about a dozen of its tower houses, where throughout most of Tuscany they were destroyed. This place also has a commanding view of the countryside, and this is another hill town that is built for defensive purposes. This is a model of the town in wood. A lot of these small walkways that now we consider quaint, but if you were an enemy trying to get through here, I'm sure you wouldn't be so thrilled about these narrow walkways. During World War II, the country was actually bombed by the Americans for like 10 days. A priest was finally able to convince the Americans that there were no more than 10 Germans in the whole village, and they could storm in any time they wanted, and evidently they listened to the priest. San Gimignano has many fine examples of Romanesque and Gothic architectures. It's actually quite amazing at how much architecture there is in these small little hill towns. This was the last of our visit for that one day, and then back to Florence.